We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Hello and welcome to Liberty Nation Radio, heard coast to coast on the Radio America Network from our flagship station in the nation's capital, WWRC in Washington, D.C. I'm your host, Mark Angelides. On today's special show, we're going to be examining the aftermath of the Trump assassination attempt and JD Vance being picked for vice president. Remember, this program is proudly sponsored by LibertyNation.com, where you can access podcasts, breaking news, analysis, and a range of biting and brilliant shows to whet your appetite for freedom and your fondness for the great American Constitution. How will Donald Trump's VP pick JD Vance be welcomed by the masses? Well, that's a question that's probably on everybody's lips this morning. And we're very fortunate to have with us Liberty Nation's executive editor, Lisa K. Donner, who follows these things with great interest and insight. Thanks for being here, Lisa.
Good to be here, Mark. You can't say it's a boring time across the pond in politics, can you?
It's really not. It's the Chinese saying, may you live in interesting times. They meant it specifically for us.
For such a time as this, as the Bible says, right?
So we're recording this not long after Donald Trump has announced his VP pick being Ohio Junior Senator JD Vance. And
let me just interrupt you. I'm going to interrupt. Yeah. Credit where credit is due. You called it.
I did. I thought it was going to be Vance. A good couple of months ago, I think I called that one.
I'm going to turn this around on you. Why?
Sure. Well, two things actually, Lisa. The first thing is why I didn't think it could be anybody else. And the second part was the inherent benefits that JD Vance brings to the campaign.
Sure.
Well, so do you want to start with the benefits or with why it couldn't be anybody else?
I'm going to be interviewing you here.
All right.
I'm going to play host for a few minutes here.
Sure. Yeah, our new interim host, Lisa K. Donner.
What did Vance bring to the table that say Scott didn't exactly grow up in the lap of luxury?
Sure. So here's the thing that's happening across America, as I'm sure you know this, because you follow the polling as much as I do, and we delve deep into the demographics of this polling, the crosstabs, who's doing what. And this election is a battle for the soul of the working class Americans. And now that's been something that's gone party to party like a ping pong ball for a long time. And then Donald Trump came along as the most recent iteration and kind of pulled the working class in with him in terms of the jobs creation that happened. And what you have on the other side is you have the Democrats headed by Joe Biden saying that it's the rich who are benefiting off your backs. Right. But what you have here is you have somebody like JD Vance who not only identifies with let's be fair, the poorer people, because he grew up out in the holler, as they call it. If you've read his book, you know what that means. Or if you're from the Midwest, you probably know too. But you've got this guy who grew up in abject poverty, living a life that is so relatable to so many people who are a forgotten America. When people talk about poverty in modern politics, they talk about minorities. That's what they talk about. They talk about or single mothers, or they talk about black families, or they talk about Hispanic families. They don't talk about you're Appalachian born, you're hillbillies essentially. You're Appalachian born, follow down that Appalachian trailway, and nobody really has talked to them because there aren't any jobs there, and there's an expectation because of all the identity politics that, well, if you're white and you can't make it, well, there must be something wrong with you, without looking at what the general malaise that it has swept working class America, regardless of race. And I think JD Vance brought that to the table because he showed that you can go from the holler, from let's be fair, a very dysfunctional family. If you know his background, it's a very dysfunctional family. A lot of love, but also a lot of trauma. And then you can go on to join the Marines, go to one of the most prestigious universities in the nation, if not the world, then become a successful businessman, then go on to become a senator. And now he's a heartbeat away from the resolute
Well,
destiny,
it really is a
the
rags to
American
riches
dream.
story. And I think Democrats have historically tried to lay claim to the working class American.
Mm.
They've been the party of labor for so many years. But I think that is turning, that worm is turning. And that's what has, I think, Democrats very concerned this election. Not only do you have a JD Vance who speaks to um, you know, the average American, or even maybe the one that's really trying to pull himself up by his bootstraps. It's interesting, the book Hillbilly Elegy, which is a must read, and the movie. There was a segment in the movie where he's sitting around the table and somebody called him a redneck, and he said, "We don't use that term,"
Mm.
And I thought that was very telling. He's happy to call himself a hillbilly, but he's not going to call himself a redneck. And, there is a part of America that these folks are very proud. I grew up in Western Pennsylvania. My grandfather was a steel worker. I can't say I grew up in abject poverty. I certainly did not. But I know these people, and I'm familiar with these towns that have been run into the ground largely by the hand of NAFTA, when Bill Clinton brought that in and just decimated Western Pennsylvania, decimated Ohio, decimated West Virginia. And they kept saying, "Oh, well, we'll give them new jobs. They'll be able to be computer programmers." Well, uh, needless to say, that wasn't going to work, and it didn't work, and it hasn't worked, and it's not going to work.
Not when you can get computer programmers in from India and you've got the internet, so you don't even have to bring them in.
Yeah, hello, this is Bombay. How can I help you?
It's the Karachi call center, I like to call it.
Yeah,
Yes, so let's talk about that line there, that Pennsylvania Ohio line, West Pennsylvania Ohio line. There's a Howard Kurtz was writing on Fox News
yeah,
Digital, and he had a beautiful line, and he said something like he's from Ohio, but he speaks Midwestern.
yeah.
Now there's a big distinction here, isn't there, Lisa, between Ohio and the Midwest, but it's the language and the ambitions, I guess. The societal and cultural ambitions are so intertwined. You're from the area. Give us the
Well, it's
information.
interesting because being from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, at the southern part of Pittsburgh, actually, where not far away from where the attempted assassination shooter was from. We never considered ourselves Midwesterners in Pittsburgh. We considered ourselves kind of East Coast people. But then you go an hour west and you're in Ohio, and then you're really into middle America and you're really into the Midwest. And so it's interesting how people, view themselves like I was saying, he viewed himself as a hillbilly proudly, but as a redneck, no, absolutely not. People in Pittsburgh didn't really necessarily consider themselves Midwesterners, but people in Ohio do. But bottom line, you can say, well, Trump's always had these people. What does he need these people for now? But there, I think you have a lot of poverty in the inner cities, and the inner cities have traditionally gone Democratic. They've traditionally gone blue. But I think that's beginning to change a little bit. Younger people, Black people, Hispanic people, Biden is having real problems, at least in the polls,
Mm.
pulling his weight with this. And that's the Democrats' bread and butter.
Well, we're going to be talking those key demographics after we get back, just after this short break. Don't go anywhere. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.